in the water sector, and about 2.6 billion in the agriculture sector, 60 to 80% of which are actually water-related operations, whether it's water storage, water conveyance, irrigation water management, improved water practices. But let me also comment on the question you raised about interlinkages. Now, you cannot separate water from other aspects of development. One needs to look at the nexus between the water, the energy, and climate change. And our approach in the bank has been to look at water development in an integrated way. So anytime the bank looks at an investment in the, for instance, energy sector, we also try and identify what are the possible benefits for the agriculture. What could be the opportunities to improve domestic water supply? So you have the main investment justified on one particular sector, but also looking at other opportunities that can make the investment a lot more attractive overall.
Well, Mr. Abu Sabah, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And Seleshi Bekele is the Senior Water Resources and Climate Specialist for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. He says that a priority at COP17 is adaptation and the Green Climate Fund.
Mr. Seleshi Bekele, welcome to the program. Talk to us about the work of UNECA, AUC, and also AFDB in Africa.
The three institutions are doing a number of things with respect to development of Africa. With respect to climate change, we are co-implementing a program called Clean Dev Africa, which is Climate for Development in Africa. This program constitutes the Africa Climate Policy Center program of work, which is related to the analytical work related to climate change and the policy dimension. The African Union Commission is providing the political leadership and implementing the climate change and desertification unit program. And African Development Bank is implementing a component called Clean Dev Special Fund, which is a component for investment on climate data information issues.
What would you say these three organizations' focus is as far as water is concerned?
The program of ACPC involves knowledge generation, dissemination, and sharing, generating policy based on this science and knowledge, and also focusing on capacity building dimension, and also creating advocacy and consensus building. Within those, there are a number of thematic areas and sectors we are addressing. It involves climate data and information issue, water issue, agriculture issue, energy issues, and so on. But also we are looking in the context of mitigation, adaptation, financing, relevance to Africa.
And what are the expectations of the outcomes here, sir, as far as these organizations are concerned?
Yeah, the expectation is to move forward the agenda of the most important areas for Africa forward, like the adaptation area. Specifically, I'm focusing on water and climate change. And in this area, we are trying to make a strong case about water issue in the context of adaptation, and also in attracting significant funding, for example, in the context of Green Climate Fund. When we look at water, it's the most crucial area through which climate change manifests itself. When you say climate change, generally mitigation dimension is mostly related to the gas, the emission of gas, and reducing this emission. But when you look at adaptation dimension, it is really about water. It's about managing water to overcome the problem of drought, to overcome the problem of flood, to overcome the problem of storm and sea level rise and so on. Therefore, climate change manifests itself very strongly through the medium of water. Therefore, till now, the climate change negotiation is not addressing strongly the water issue. So we are bringing this case very strongly together with the three institutions, as well as also African Ministerial Council on Water, Global Water Partnership, and other institutions who are working in the water sector.
Mr. Bekele, sir, thank you very much for having been my guest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Rhoda Peace, an African Union Commissioner, says that the issue of water needs to be brought to the agenda of the global community.
Commissioner Peace, welcome to the program. Now, you as the African Union, talk to us about the message you are carrying to COP17.
COP17 is a global issue. African Union is a big region in the global climate change negotiations, and so it is important that the issues which matter are also put high on the agenda. Water matters a lot as far as climate change discussions are concerned. So we are here to bring the issue of water to the global community, to African leaders, and to the communities. So it is important that water is put within, it is mainstreamed within the agenda of climate change negotiations. So this meeting of climate change negotiations, COP17, should look at water issues. Without water, we cannot have life. Water is life.
Commissioner, why water?
Water on the continent is high on the agenda of the African Union. We have, for example, the 2025 water vision. This vision is very, very important because it has a lot of action areas. The leadership of the continent, the heads of state, when they were in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, in their usual sessions, they did discuss, they did agree to set the agenda of water high. So, water matters on the continent.
Some people would say, Commissioner, that water is very cross-cutting. So when one hears, well, let's have water as a standalone issue to be discussed, so people are beginning to question, well, where do you stop once you start doing that? How about energy and other sectors also? Your thoughts?
Water cuts across all sectors, and I would like to agree with you. But why water? Without water, you cannot have agriculture. In fact, the continent of Africa is having a lot of problems to do with food security because we are dependent on rain. If we had enough water, if we are using water for irrigation, I don't think that we would be having a problem, because unless we have irrigation, and you cannot irrigate unless you use water. Look at the issue of the Horn of Africa. The drought in the Horn of Africa is a resultant of the fact that there is less water. Now it has started raining, of course, but the many, many millions of people who have had no food is because there was no water. The livestock, when you see livestock dying in the Horn of Africa, it's because there is less water. Water matters a lot. Water for transport, water for infrastructure, water for life. So that is water.
Well, Commissioner, it's on that hopeful note we have to leave it then. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Cameron Ironside is the program director for the International Hydropower Association. He says that hydropower has an important role to play going into the future in fighting climate change.
Mr. Cameron, welcome to the program. What role does hydropower have in alternative power sources?
I think that hydropower has a role to play both in adaptation and in mitigating against climate change. When it mitigates against climate change, hydropower has a key role within the design of renewable energy systems. So rather than introducing individual renewable energies, the goal is going to be to make sure that you put systems in place that prevent us having to go back to thermal options around energy systems. Some renewable energies such as wind and solar provide a strong base load, but they're very intermittent. And you need other alternative power sources that are going to meet that intermittency problem on demand. Hydropower, especially large storage hydropower and pumped storage hydropower, meets that demand. You're able to access that kind of hydropower on demand as you need it. And so hydropower can smooth out the intermittency of wind and solar. On the adaptation side, hydropower is one of the few ways right now of paying for water infrastructure. So if you stick a turbine on the end of a water storage project, you're able to generate electrons through that storage and so fund what you built to store the water that you're going to need to adapt to climate change.
Is it sufficient, in your opinion, that we can depend on water and rain?
I think there's two concepts in that. The first is we're not running out of water. The water in the system stays the same. The amount of water in the system stays the same. The question of when it's delivered and how it's delivered is changing fundamentally. So what you're having periods of drought and at the same time periods of intense rainfall. And these variabilities in water availability are increasing. And a key thing to be able to do in adapting to climate change is the ability to be able to store that water for when you're going to need it. So hydropower plays a key role in actually storing water to provide it when you're going through these times of variability.
Interesting points you're making. My question is, why haven't we harnessed this area sufficiently?
I think the key thing to note is that whereas in America you've got about 20% of your technically available capacity already developed as far as hydropower is concerned, in Africa we've only developed 7% of our technically available hydropower potential. So there's a significant upside availability of hydropower in Africa that can be used, and that can be used to adapt to climate change and to introduce renewable energy systems in to mitigate against further effects of climate change, which is a key role that's been identified as developing countries develop to make sure that the energy systems they're putting in place are not contributing further to climate change through emissions. I think a key factor though is to make sure that when you do develop hydropower that it's done sustainably.
From your interactions here at the COP and otherwise, are you getting the sense that that message is getting through, that we do need to harness hydropower?
I think there are a number of issues, and they relate largely to financing and how we access finance. Africa's traditionally, for large projects, struggled for this kind of finance, except if you look in the oil and gas sectors, for example, where you've got the private sector coming in heavily. But financing hydropower, the way that hydropower is constructed and operates, involves a very high upfront cost that needs to be met. After you've funded the high upfront cost, they're very low running costs, but it's bridging that hurdle of developing and getting those high upfront costs that you need to develop hydropower. And I think we need to use the tools that are being put in place to make sure that we're able to access them to be able to build these kind of projects.
Would you say the message is getting through that we really need resources financially, that is, in the sector of hydropower?
I think we need to be very clear around the messaging that's coming out around hydropower. At the moment, there seems to be a policy focus on run-and-river and small hydropower, and there's no looking at the incentives and the opportunities around large hydropower. And I think we need to make sure that when we design our policies, we don't exclude large, especially storage hydropower. Storage hydropower enables us to store water for when we need it in times of drought caused by climate change. It also allows us to act as a balancing load for renewable energy systems, and that storage needs to be incentivized. And as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, it's not being incentivized under our current policy directions.
Sir, thank you very much for having been my guest.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Diana McQueen is the Minister of Environment and Water for the Canadian province of Alberta. She says that water should be on the world's agenda. Minister McQueen, welcome to the program. Your province is interesting in the sense that in one part you do have quite some supply of water, and then in the other you do not have as much. But you have managed to supply water to everybody. How did you do that? Because I think here people are talking also of water management.
We really talked about in our session really about some of the leadership that we've had in Alberta with regards to Water for Life strategy. That's our provincial strategy on how we manage and allocate water and look at conservation. The other part is on regional planning and the regions, and how do we plan for growth of communities, for growth of industries, agriculture, and through those regional planning, and deal with the areas that are irrigation districts so that there's more drought, and how we've worked with those and how they have really done a really good job about making sure that they're managing their water issues so that we can have strong crops in the southern part of our province through irrigation districts. So we've, between regional planning, certainly water for life strategy, and then I would say the third thing is really about the sharing of water, so the transboundary water sharing between different provinces and to the United States and then eventually to the territories is a big piece about where we pass on a certain allocation into Saskatchewan, into Montana and United States. That's a big piece in those agreements. How do we make sure that as we're using water as efficiently and effectively, but also making sure that we're passing on the water for others to have as well.
How do you do that exactly, Minister, without yourselves running out of water?
Yeah, well, that's part of the agreement, but you always have to make sure that everybody has enough as well. That's part of the responsibility piece. So as we continue to grow our province, we continue to look at the conservation piece and management and storage so that we don't get to that part of it. And so it's important for us first that we pass on, for example, to Saskatchewan 50% of the allocation, but that we're also looking at how do we make sure that we're managing under those areas so that Alberta has enough water and as we continue to grow our province. We have some innovative projects too. I would say with regards to in our capital city in Alberta, Edmonton, very much a leader in waste issues, and wastewater has a great project where they are recycling that for the industry. So using the wastewater, recycling it, and then it's used then for our oil and gas industry as well. The other one is the oil sands area where about 9 times of the water is recycled, that they use that. So it's not just using all the water at once and then it's done. Those ways that we get innovative in technology and making sure that we're reusing and recycling as much as we possibly can. And those are just 2 examples of new innovations that Alberta's doing, and I think they're great examples. We're working on right now a project that will be kicking off in the new year in 2012 with regards to looking at water as a major issue, making sure that we're capturing, we're storing, all of those things, using it to its best use. Our new Premier, Alison Redford, that was our ministry used to be called Alberta Environment, and she's changed the name to Alberta Environment and Water for that specific reason, to highlight the importance of water in Alberta, to make sure that we're responsible developers, but we're really looking at the water for the future as we grow the province for the next 25, 50 years, that we're keen into the water issues now. Well, we don't have a great deal of issues, but making sure that as we plan, that we're thinking about that long term. So it's a great opportunity, great vision our new Premier has.
There's been discussions here at the COP, Minister, on whether water should be a standalone issue when it comes to negotiations. Some people are saying it's an issue of trying to make sure that there is resources, financial resources for this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think water is one of the most important issues for all of us, right? And so it's something that's very, very important. And I think as you move forward, you'll probably see more discussions with regards to water. We're having them in our own jurisdictions, in our own countries. Certainly topic today, and I think everywhere it's an important issue.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you. Very nice meeting you.
Water is the drop of life for all mankind. The water experts at COP17 argue that a water-secure world will harness water's productive power and minimize its destructive force, an important agenda point for the debate on climate change going forward.
Many in the agriculture sector agree with adaptation, but they say that they need money. But with the EU putting almost over $100 million with an initiative amongst COMESA, SADC and EAC, maybe adaptation might just be realized within this region.